Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, September 21st. We are into the Synchro XYZ Festival now being underway on Yu-Gi-Oh! Which means probably till the end of the month. That's all I'm going to be doing, is just playing that. There is a new, I guess, structure deck that we should buy 3 times. I hope we have enough gold for that. And then there is a new deck field. Or field in general. It's not called a deck field. I really don't have that much gold for everything that's here. We have a bunch of extra Synchro XYZ Festival stuff. But we also have a bunch of daily stuff, and I need to do a solo mode at some point for the daily quest. We'll see. We have 9 days left, and there are 5 days here, and then 5 more here. So I missed like 1 day this month, it seems. But not too bad, honestly. We may get a duel live, because this does seem to kind of like to reset during the noon times. Okay. So this isn't new. Just make sure we understand what is new and what isn't. And we don't have any secret packs. And we're kind of just building up this to about 100 for really no reason. So the structured deck is new. Inherently, you... What does this mean? Card cannot be generated. Which card can't be generated? There's definitely 3 ultra rares here that if I just spend 1500 for 3 ultra rares, that's probably perfect. Same is the case here. We'll have a lot of extra stuff. Yeah, notably this card, Spellbook of Judgment, cannot be generated, which is weird. That there would be an exclusive card, effectively, in one of these. But yeah, it does just make a lot of sense to spend the 1500 3 times, get 3 copies of those cards, and just have that guarantee. Now, does that mean at some point I might have an extra ultra rare? Yes, but very possibly it's not something that can be turned into dust. And see, this card is limited, but I think the game is looking at a perspective of, well, at some point maybe this card won't be limited and you would want 3 copies of the cards, and so it doesn't seem like it's been specifically programmed. When we go to the deck editor here in a second, it doesn't seem like it has been programmed to actually care. And just for consistency's sake, we'll waste 600 gems, which is quite a lot, just to make sure we have everything. Since I started this game day 1, this would be particularly a decent account to sell if I was ever going to try and do something like that. I don't think I would bother, and I don't think you really can sell an account without getting scammed. But yeah, it has everything, so we're definitely going for that collector's mentality and that completionist sake. Alright. But we won't even be able to really play this deck for a while, because unless this deck just magically is an XYZ synchro deck, which I don't think so. And interesting that you don't even get a full 15 extra cards, so you're getting a little screwed in that aspect. So dismantle all extra cards. Well, I guess that did push me over the line at some level. This is the first time I've been able to dismantle extra cards and get any ultra rare crafting points in a very long time. So that for the crafting points was probably a good deal. Now I still need to just start crafting a ton of neutral and rare cards, but I almost need like an automated system to do it for me because I'm just never going to have the extra time. Speaking of extra times, for the accountability section today, let's see, cannot be because it doesn't. Alright, see, so that deck wouldn't work if we were going to do that. I couldn't play this deck if I was going to do that. I couldn't play. Actually, I could play this deck pretty well if I got rid of these cards. So there might be a argument around this. So we have this Synchro XYZ Festival edit deck, and then just remove everything that would make this Synchro XYZ Festival deck unplayable, which is just that, and then just go with more of these, and then I guess you would just see if I had any other Zodiac cards that are XYZ cards that just are not in this. Yeah, this guy. One. Don't have any more copies of that, although those are rare, so I could just make more if I wanted to, although it kind of wouldn't matter. So we already have 3 copies of that, 1 copy of that, 3 copies of that, I think. 3 copies of this, 3 copies of this. I have no idea what the little different colored dots mean. It's like these are gold and they're not foil versions of the card. These are foil versions of the card and they're also gold, but they're not full in on the dots. So yeah, I have absolutely no clue as to what these dots at the bottom of the system are supposed to be. Alright, well, that's not a terrible deck. It's at least a fairly understandable deck. Although, I don't know if it's really that good of a deck because on the face of it, I don't think the synergy of any of these cards, any of these effect monsters, do anything. I don't think I can summon any of the people up. Yeah, this is a terrible deck to play, really. Well, the good news is unless they've changed the event info, again, you get the same reward with the loner decks as you do with the non-loner decks. So we will just play with the loner decks. Alright, and we just need to hop into this. Okay, for the accountability section, over the past day or so, I've been playing Darksiders 3. It's nice to get back to something that is more of just a video game. In a lot of ways, Darksiders 3 feels like it doesn't have enough budget. A lot of the cutscenes feel like they were half finished. You get a lot of what feels like very weird jumping between in-engine cutscenes and pre-rendered cutscenes, and also walk and talk cutscenes where you're actually not, you still have control of the character and are walking down a hallway and somebody's talking to you. There's still a ton of visual pop-in, and there is a framiness that pops up, at least leaving the game running for a while. There's a framiness that I've seen here and there where you've just seen some frame drops and lagginess. And no, I don't think that's anything to do with my computer. I think I am safely away from anything being wrong with my computer at this point. Like, but also I haven't really been pushing my computer very hard. And playing Darksiders 3, which is a 2018 game with everything set up to the highest visual settings and recording on OBS, is pushing it. Speaking of video cards pushing it, NVIDIA announced a $1,500 or $1,600 480 Ti graphics card, and I suppose it's PC gaming related to say that EVGA has announced that they have decided to completely stop making video cards, and in their partnership with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA has just been treating them bad, which that's literally the reason they give, is that it is straight up an emotional decision, not more than a business decision. So yeah, I am fairly enjoying Darksiders 3. It's a little slow, and it's introduced the idea. Now, I could be halfway through the game and I really wouldn't know. But it's introduced the idea... Oops. That was stupid. These are P-scale cards. Alright. So I should probably just concede at this point. Let's see what the most defensive thing I could do is. They introduced a character of Pride that's like this female angel looking character. Each of the 7 deadly sins in the game seems to be fairly different. As characters. So yeah, they introduce a character named Lust who I haven't seen yet, but they talk about her, and they make that seem like that would be potentially your main 7 deadly sin character that you would have run into at the beginning of the game, and then fought and maybe lost, and then that would just be a main antagonist, if not the main antagonist, throughout the entire game. Female for female, since you're playing as Fury, and since there is this odd imbalance where all the monsters that you're fighting definitely present as either male or monstrous in such a way that you would just assume that it's genderless. You really aren't seeing any female type enemies, and since it is just playing on the same idea that female enemies in video games Um, it is playing on the idea that females in video games tend to just be more agile and faster. With Fury, it would make a lot of sense that you would see female enemies in the game that are more agile and just fast. But we're not really seeing that at all. Instead, you're seeing a lot of characters that feel a lot like the characters in Darksiders 1, which were also all male characters, and you really wouldn't have ever questioned it there in that case, because, heck, video games, for the vast majority, lean towards that benevolent sexism where they won't let you punch or beat up a female character or enemy, and even when they do, it seems to be at a far lower rate than 50%. And see, having just played Shank 2, I was a little surprised when they did add female characters, but then I was not particularly surprised that the female characters are there half for titillation's sake and visual appeal as much as for just trying to be equal sake or equality sake. There was a female angel in the first Darksiders character, and she was a big role in a character. So, but that was pretty much the only female character. Notably for Fury, they give you different types of armor, but the armor looks exactly the same. It's just a slight color palette swap, and the armor she wears is a little bit more form-fitting, but it's not really going very skin tight or anything. If anything, Fury's armor should probably match the armor of the other of War, which is just gigantic and covering almost every inch of his body. Let's try that again for sure. Well, playing that one game got me 50. Maybe at this point we will start to hit a level where you do actually earn a decent amount of reward just by playing instead of having to win. Because I feel like these previous festivals, you had to win to actually get a reward, and you were getting like 100 when you were winning. That'd be a pretty great balance change. Yeah, it does seem weird then to have different costumes though, if they are going to try to go the more mature route with Fury and keep her armor in line with the big bulky armor of the other horsemen. And they still don't really quite get to that point because they are doing the whole gimmick of having her have different elements highlight her purple hair. So when you use the fire element ability, your hair turns into fire. When you use the lightning element ability, your hair turns to lightning. Speaking of lightning, I ran into a boss in a special kind of side area, which the game is a little schizophrenic. It definitely feels like there's some side areas made by different teams that were not bothered to be integrated into the main game. And so I was fighting this boss and I kept dying over and over again, and it really screwed me over because when you die you lose all of your currency and you have to go get it back. And so with that problem happening where I'm jumping down to an arena to fight somebody and then dying in that arena, I have to go fight the guy and beat him. And I could have beaten him the first time if I had realized that he was literally sucking the life out of me in my lightning form. He would stick his hand up and lightning would look like it was shooting up in the air, but actually it was more sucking lightning down and recharging his health. So I would get to the point where I was almost about to succeed, um, then I would lose completely because he just regenerated his health. And no other enemy had ever done it before. Obviously, there should have been the Watcher character who's supposed to be a hint giver, like in the first game. That the Watcher should have said he's absorbing the life out of you, or he's sucking the life out of you, or something like that. But they don't ever. This Watcher character never does that at all. It doesn't say anything at all. It's a wasted character. They make this female Watcher and then they write her exactly like the male Watcher in the first game, when obviously you would have had a better opportunity to have the female Watcher be a completely different personality, very helpful, very nice, to play against Fury being kind of a jerk, and to play against the Watcher in the main game being kind of a jerk. Just so you can write something different, but inherently it kind of doesn't even matter because you're not using you're not efficiently using the Watcher as a character in the same ways that they aren't efficiently using any of the characters as an antagonist. It really feels like Wrath is the main antagonist today, because you did fight Wrath at the beginning of Darksiders 3, somewhat at the beginning. Not really that much at the beginning. But yeah, Wrath and Fury are synonymous as ideas, so fighting Wrath at the beginning and him being the main bad guy is fine, but I feel like that probably should be a female character for better story writing reasons. But also, he just needs to be more prevalent. Wrath needs to be mentioned in some way when you fight each of the other 7 deadly sins, or Wrath needs to show up and attack you more often, or just send taunting messages to you more often. Instead, the game feels very much like you could run through the game in any order, which I don't believe is actually true, because it is gated and locked very much like a Metroidvania game. But yeah, it does kind of feel like you can go in any order against any of the 7 deadly sins. So much so that at one point I run into this church, and that's when you first see Pride. You attack Pride in the cutscene and can't do any damage to her at all. And then you see Pride walk through a portal to a different world. And either you follow Pride or you go in the church, and I chose to go into the church, and there is another path in the church that leads towards an angel outpost that leads towards Lust, eventually being a thing, being the bad guy. Also, by that point, which is about, it feels like it's halfway through the game, that's the point where they start to explain why you are fighting a lot of like undead angels and demons, and most of the angels and demons you are seeing in the world are dead, and instead you're fighting these other kind of monstrosities. Because it really doesn't make sense as far as what the timeline is, as far as what's happening in Darksiders 3. I don't know if what's happening is happening during the events of the first Darksiders, or if it's happening, well, past the events. It could be hundreds of years, thousands of years, even, and you really just wouldn't know. And see, the timeline as far as what happened in Darksiders 1 versus Darksiders 2 versus Darksiders 3 is all fairly disconnected. I think the general idea is that they are all prequels, and they all have to be prequels, because the ending of Darksiders 1 effectively summons all of the 4 horsemen. And so Darksiders 2 kind of kills Like, it kind of kills Death as the second horseman, so I wouldn't be surprised if Fury also gets killed. Should I put these kinds of monsters in the extras field? Probably not. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if 3 out of the 4 horsemen all die at the end of their games, and then they are resurrected when the events of the first game end, and the war breaks the actual 7th seal of the apocalypse and starts the apocalypse for real, instead of it the fake 7th seal being broken, is which I think how it breaks down. There's a lot of storyline and design decisions there, and at a very certain level, Darksiders 3, which I'll stop talking about here in a second, is just a little bit of a disappointment for how long it was in development. Not just on technical reasons, but just on not really doing anything new. And it definitely at times feels like it needs something a little bit new as far as a secondary gameplay mechanic or just more puzzle rooms. You definitely go through these fairly small dungeons and are just killing everything in the room, and then you go through a doorway and then you just kill everything in the next room. And you really don't get a lot of breakup around that idea. Also, I would say, even compared to the first Darksiders game, there's this desire to have more round pathways and curved pathways. Guess what we should do is we should try a different deck here. Because yeah, we're not getting anywhere with that deck. Although we're really just trying to learn. That was a P-scale deck, and I barely learned that in 2 gameplays. Which, that does highlight a problem, potentially, with any of these festivals, is that they're designed around the idea of learning new concepts, but they're only a weekend long, usually, or maybe they'll go a week, and you probably need to play a new deck for much longer than that, depending on how much you play, to start to learn the intricacies of the decks. Yeah, and I oddly applauded Darksiders 3 for not holding your hand and telling you what to do, but then when you get to the point where you're fighting a boss and he's sucking life out of you and you've just never seen that happen because there needed to be like a voice line of dialogue, clearly they stopped paying voice actors or writers to write lines of dialogue, because you have humans that you save and they have like 1 sentence of dialogue that you can prompt from them by pressing B, and that is literally the only conversation you're going to have with them, so they might as well not say anything or just not be interactable. Like it would be even in character for Fury to refuse to speak to humans completely. But yeah. So it'll be weird, certainly I would say, for whatever the 4th Darksiders games, which I hope they do get to a 4th and wrap up their narrative, because there's a danger that the 4th game is going to just star Strife alone, which I don't know if that works, because then you're pushing for a 5th game effectively that would star all 4 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and I don't think that's their desire. They wouldn't have made that side game starring Strife, really, if they were going to go in that direction. So making the assumption that the fourth Darksiders game is going to have all 4 of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, it still comes down to a weird question about, is everybody going to want to play as war, and then have 3 co-op companions that are either going to be non-playable characters or just friends you're playing online? And even at that, is everybody just going to want to play as war? Or is the 4th Darksiders game going to potentially try and have you jump between different characters for different sections of the game? Which, that could work to a certain level. Particularly though, I imagine the game is... So you literally can't do anything here without Ghost Trick. Well then, let's set that. And then in the turn. Yep. If you are jumping between the 4 characters, they are going to, for the most part, interact in the exact same ways. That they'll have to potentially add a few features to here and there, a few abilities to maybe Death in particular, because I don't recall Death did a lot of extra jumping, and only Fury really has had the ability to hover and do a double jump in the way that she does it. But they all tend to have some form of long-range weapon eventually that they unlock, and they all tend to have a short-range weapon. So, yeah. It would be very believable if they had the 4th Darksiders game have all 4 of the characters, but then 3 of the horsemen go in each direction as far as how the apocalypse is supposed to go. So one goes north, one goes south, one goes east, one goes west, and then war catches up with each of the characters, and you do just play as war the whole time, because inherently the first Darksiders game stars War, and that is the character I think most players would want to play. I just want to see the series actually finish and be somewhat decent, and then from that point they probably should think about rebooting or making a new series that is somewhat similar to that. But I don't have a lot of faith that THQ Nordic, Gunfire Games, Embracer Group, whoever is involved, really care enough to even bother to do a reboot. In the time, because of THQ going out of business and the delay between Darksiders 2 and Darksiders 3, somebody else could have made their own series and steal those generic ideas fairly easily, and then nobody bothered to do it. There really isn't enough of a core concept around the Darksiders series. It is a heavy metal album, effectively, and that is pretty much all it is. Like, it's a heavy metal album that wants to be hardcore, but not that hardcore. It's not 2022 levels of gore or blood or violence. There's no cussing in it. There's no nudity in it. So it really is edgelord teenager hardcore more than anything else. They don't use capital G God or lower G God as a word in the entire game, and instead they talk about the maker or the creator. But then there's also a species of trolls in the game that feel just oddly added in called the Makers. And then there are different planets in different dimensions. So it's kind of like a Warhammer 20k storyline, that, or fan fiction storyline, that just has angels and demons. There's no Lucifer, there is no Satan character. They don't mention anybody like that. I don't know if there's anything else more to say about Darksiders 3, but yeah, I'm enjoying it for being a game, even if it is a slightly glitchy game at this point. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say. I will say, I guess, also for the accountability section of what I did, I contacted ShiftUp via their customer service, which almost certainly means that it'll take a while, if it ever gets to their legal department, about this game on Steam that is using their copyrighted images here. But noticeably, I just reloaded the page and this game is on Steam still and available for purchase, so whipping out a DMCA claim seems to take longer than a day. And I'll keep an eye on it and see if it ever gets taken down or not. It may very well be a case where, let's try one more time with this deck, although I think that deck is going to be pretty awful. It may be a case that Valve is just really bad about responding to DMCA or copyright theft things. Like, I had already flagged it on Valve and it didn't get taken down. So it obviously is going to be a longer process. Maybe that's a good thing, but particularly on Steam, it probably isn't. Like, Steam is definitely not YouTube, and definitely doesn't have a bunch of people just making false claims and false DMCA content ID claims. Steam doesn't have a content ID claim system in which you can get money but leave something up on the Steam store. It only has the actual legal DMCA procedures, or something close to them, their interpretation of that, to take something down. And yes, I suppose at a certain point you could try and ruin your competitors by committing fraud and taking somebody's game down, but I don't think too many people are actually trying to do that on Steam. But yeah, they did email me back, ShiftUp, and said they were taking it seriously. And thanks for letting them know. Like, in a funny way, you get a response back from that, and it is perhaps a little accusatory, particularly because it's being translated from Korean to English, as far as the customer support, I'm sure, is. But yeah, I could see getting a response back even from an English speaker going, yes, thank you for letting us know about this very serious matter, is basically what the first sentence said. We will implement the strictest of countermeasures possible, just in case, I guess. They just want me to know that they're taking it serious, and that if, I suppose, I was actually involved in it, I should be shaking in my boots, but I'm not involved in it, so I'm not shaking in my boots. But there definitely have been stories in all kinds of situations where somebody tries to be a good Samaritan and report something, and then it backfires on the Good Samaritan and reports on them, and to the point where the legal advice is to never talk to the police, even if you think you're completely innocent, because you never know what kind of psycho that specific police officer you might talk to is, and whether or not they'll just decide to have a roid rage episode and shoot you or arrest you and charge you with something. So much to even a level of, if you're robbed, you might as well that you might consider not talking to the police even in that case. Okay, we need a ghost trick. What specifically need to do is put a ghost trick monster on the field. Okay. So it's like you have to get one ghost trick on the field first before you can do anything else. Activate the effect of a card. Let's see what this does. Moving on, YouTube made a lot of announcements about changes to the YouTube Partner Program, but in a lot of ways, when you get down into the nitty-gritty of it, it doesn't really feel like they're making any changes that will actually be impactful to as many people as they think, as it seems like they would. And on top of that, they're going to force everybody in the YouTube Partner Program to re-sign a contract, and so who knows what's really in that contract if you want to be conspiratorial to it. But they were really hyped around this. So what they want now to get into the YouTube Partner Program is that you still have to have 1,000 subscribers, and inherently this is the linchpin that makes this just ridiculous anyways, because they have changed absolutely nothing to encourage YouTuber viewers to subscribe. So you're still going to eliminate a significant number of people, particularly new creators, when trying to have a channel that could be in the YouTube Partner Program, because they're just going to be trapped at struggling to get to 1,000 subscribers. As someone who's had a channel that has teetered around 500 subscribers this entire year and really struggled to even get up to 100 subscribers when it was first started, I can definitely point towards it not being easy to get subscribers unless you just cheat and pay for them, and I suspect that's where a lot of people have to get their start, really, is just to cheat and get people to pay for them. Specifically, though, with this new change, you don't need 4,000 public watch hours if you're making shorts. Instead, you need a ridiculous amount of 10 million views. And it's not just views, it's valid public shorts views in the last 90 days. Which, that means basically 1% of 1% of shorts creators are going to be able to go into the YouTube Partner Program, and they're going to have to haul butt to constantly make YouTube short content over and over again. Almost certainly this is going to be at the detriment of the Shorts Fund, if anybody was really making any money on the Shorts Fund, which I don't know if anybody really was. And then they say some of these benefits might even be earlier, but they didn't really give any of the details as far as super thanks and things like that. So you have now a second path or situation of 4,000 public watch hours, which is not, I think, that really hard to get if you have 1,000 subscribers or 10 million views. But if, let's just run the numbers here, if you have 1,000 subscribers on the nose, then they would have to be watching 1,000 of your shorts in 90 days to get to 1 million. So 10,000 views from every single subscriber on your shorts. Does that make sense at all? Or maybe, yeah, because it's in the last 90 days. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense at all. My math isn't off here. It can't be that off, really. No, it isn't. So you might as well have a different requirement to say you need 1 million subscribers if there was any correlation between shorts views and subscribers, which I don't think there really is. Yep. For every 1,000 people that potentially watch a YouTube short creator that wants to be in the YouTube Partner Program, they would have to have 1 subscriber. And even that number is probably too high for as little as the YouTube emphasizes subscribers, particularly if you are using it for shorts. Inherently, YouTube put out all this stuff, all this of announcements, to cover up their experiment of doing up to 10 unskippable ads on their on YouTube, and they wanted people to stop talking about that. Although inherently, content creators are not going to move the conversation over to this in any way. Yeah, more details are coming for people potentially as far as channel membership, super thanks, super stickers, and super chat, which maybe the requirements for those will be a little bit lower. It's questionable how much scams are really happening as far as a lot of these super thanks and super chat features, but also this is really just YouTube trying to get more money, get a cut of more things, and still try to overemphasize YouTube Shorts, when I think if there is a 50% fan base of YouTube Shorts on YouTube, there is definitely a 50% fan base of people who rabidly hate Shorts. Which you'd think, well, then that's even, but no, I think probably 10% of people love Shorts, 40% tolerate Shorts, and then 50% are genuinely turned off of the entire YouTube experience by Shorts existing. Alright, that's not gonna work, so let's move over to this deck. Try this one. I mean, we are getting progress by losing, so if I do want to just sit around and waste time, I could potentially just let people beat me. They are also trying to implement a different service, which is probably going to replace the free music or shared ad revenue music system that they have right now as far as putting music in YouTube's soundtrack collection. What this would do is ask content creators to pay an upfront license fee for the music and then have it play, which you would have to have a decent amount of money to burn to do that, because you have no idea if this system is going to stay around. You have no idea if you're getting a lifetime license, and you have no idea if you aren't going to get false DMCA content ID claims on this music no matter what. Like, it's already been the scenario for a lot of content creators that they could go and license music, but then they inherently will license these musics and still get content ID claims either from the legitimate owners or illegitimate people claiming to be the owners, and then they have to fight it and go through the paperwork. It's never something as simple as, oh, I bought this, I put in my YouTube channel ID, my YouTube channel will never get claimed for using this music ever. And every single time somebody has tried to use licensed music on their YouTube channel, they have regretted it. Well, that's not what I was expecting. That was definitely not what I was expecting to see what had happened, what was going to happen there, but whatever. See what's the biggest thing I can summon. That looks like the big thing. Alright. Let's summon this. Let's activate this. Let's show this. I don't know what I'm really doing at this point. Not activate that effect. I guess I should have activated that effect. That was a thought I was thinking. The other way in which this music would be used seems pretty much the same as far as shared revenue. It doesn't feel like you're sharing revenue just for the duration of the song. So if the song is 5 minutes and you have a, say, 50-minute video, it's not like the ad revenue will go at that ratio between you and your and the audio creator. It still almost certainly is going to be a 50-50 split at best, and I guess honestly it's probably going to be closer to a 50-50 split on the 30% that YouTube was giving you in the first place. Or whatever the numbers actually are. I don't even know at this point, nor do I particularly care. I almost wonder if I should do like an ad against ads at the beginning of my videos. Something like, hey, if you subscribe to me, you'll see less ads on my channel. Which at a certain level might actually be true, because like I don't want mid-roll ads, and if somebody is content IDing my videos, which I'm not getting a ton of those lately, or at least I'm not paying enough attention to know if I'm getting a ton of those. So but yeah, if I was in the YouTube partner program, I could control the amount of ads, and I really just want like one at the beginning, even for an hour-long video. It is really, I just want the symbol of making progress more than actually making progress. I'll wait until I'm desperate for cash and need money, and at that point I may run my channel and put a bunch of ads on it, but I try very hard not to do that. Let's see, moving on, Video Games Chronicles has an article here that says Embracer CEO is disappointed by the Saints Row polarizing reception. Lars Wingfors, I guess as Embracer CEO, suggests it's too early to make any calls on the future of the franchise. Apparently they had kind of like a meeting between the Embracer CEO and the Saints Row development team. At a certain level, this might be better news than it seems, though. Because up until this point, we really haven't heard anything from Embracer Group as a company, as a parent company. And they really have given off kind of a feeling like they don't care if the games are bad or if the games sell or have a poor reception. Like, that is kind of the problem with Darksiders 3 too, is that it really needed to hit the ball out of the park and have a out of the park home run, to use a baseball analogy, and instead I'm describing it as a low budget AAA game. Now, inherently, I think either Video Games Chronicles doesn't want to use the phrase polarizing as far as the polarizing reception against the characters, or polarized reception against the characters, and instead they are using the phrase polarizing of 62 to 66 reviews on Metacritic. That they're upset with the reviews perhaps more than they're upset with why the reviews are like that, which inherently the bugginess of Saints Row is the real problem, and it seems like the CEO is either throwing the development team under the bus, or the development team just didn't care to say, we need more time, we need more budget, this game is not a finished product. Which, at a certain level, you kind of have to assume that it is the development team's fault. It's hard to ever blame a developer when you can blame a publisher or a parent company, even if you're in this case. But when the entire first trailer and announcement of Saints Row is focused around how can we get this ethnically diverse group of kids to be the new face of Saints Row, and isn't this cool, and isn't this awesome that we're so woke, and that we're amazing SJWs and selectivists, it's no... that seems to be following a message being sent by the developer. Of course, it could have been that the publisher demanded that, but I doubt it is the case. Really, the first trailer, and later trailers were better on Saints Row, but the first trailer really needed to show a lot of action, a lot of gameplay mechanics, a lot of just remember Saints Row and how fun it was to play Saints Row type hints. But it doesn't show any of that, and the game doesn't have much of that, or any of that, really, I think, from what I've heard. So yeah, Saints Row is a flop, and it's not seemingly going to get any better. Here we have a video game journalist that was tweeted by someone else. There's a quote here saying that he was talking today to investors about the new Saints Row. He was bullish on its pre-release. Doesn't sound thrilled, but he believes the games will make money. Quote here is, personally, I had hoped for greater reception of the game. It's been a very polarized view, ... And there are hundreds of people engaged in this game in the group, which I assume is Embracer Group. I still have great trust in those people, and I am sure they will recommend things. They will recommend things for the future. So he's really putting a lot of faith in front of the investors in his developers. So it's funny how when you see the full quotes versus the way Video Games Chronicles painted it, you get a very different stories. He later describes Saints Row as one of the harder ones of Embracer's projects to have a high return on investment, and analysts had noticed that Embracer's return on investment on recent projects was trending downward. Wingford says he's noticed and suggests this will improve. So he's definitely trying to appease investors who are not happy with Saints Row in particular, but I don't think that they are particularly happy with the return on investment for any of the Embracer Group games, because there's been a ton of investment and not that many games even released so far. And I guess I'm just gonna have to muddle through this and play non-stop today, even if I'm gonna mostly not pay attention to it. But yeah, Embracer Group hasn't been putting out a lot of bangers. If the Destroy All Humans reboots and the SpongeBob SquarePants game is the best things you can mention that are recent, and you kind of have to forget about the Darksiders games, and you have to kind of ignore Saints Row. I don't even know how many other games have even been released by Embracer Group so far, even though they've acquired so many companies, way too many companies. And I really had some high hopes for THQ Nordic, eventually Embracer Group, but as they continuously acquired more companies and didn't announce new projects, there may be like 15 projects that are secretly in development with Embracer Group, but they're not showing anything and they're not talking about them. They're not really doing a great job of getting me hyped for a future, and so I can only look at the present. It almost wouldn't be surprising if we just see this standard pattern of Embracer Group acquiring a bunch of companies like Gearbox and then selling off those companies and firing people and just collecting IP to hoard and sit on like a dragon, same the way we've seen with like EA. EA has a ton of games that could be remade or somebody could be making sequels to, and they're just not doing it. Let's see. Head Up Games has something to say around this game called Hell Pie Switch version. We owe you Switch users an apology. We recently got reports of the game breaking bugs and severe frame rate issues for some of the games in the last few days, and after further testings we've encountered those ourselves. Shouldn't you have encountered those before you release the game? For $25 you deserve the product that runs and lives on the experience. We assure you we're working closely together with the porting studio to help fix these problems. I don't recognize the game Hell Pie at all, but yeah, Head Up Games definitely not not doing a great job of making a decent port. We still are running into that problem quite often where specific ports of specific games are not done well. Porting companies. Maybe that's where a lot of these acquisitions come from. See, one victory because the person surrendered gave me 500 versus 50, so you're still getting a much better rate of return by actually winning. Maybe that is why we're seeing companies like Embracer Group acquire so many people, is that they're tired of dealing with third-party development teams that don't care about the project and can't be held accountable. That would be the reason why to have any employees instead of just contracting out for everything in any industry or job, is to be able to control the way things are done and have more accountability. That being said, I don't know if, particularly in the game development world, there really is a lot of accountability for making a bad game like Saints Row. And they really have painted themselves in a corner because now they either need to make a Saints Row the 5th or Saints Row the 4th, whatever the next one would have been in the series for the previous generation, or they need to make a new rebooted title. Which this one was called Saints Row. It probably wouldn't be terrible if they changed the name to something like The Row and get rid of the Saints, or The Saints and get rid of the Row. Twitch made some announcements about subscription revenue shares. They're basically taking a bigger cut from what I think. But yeah, Twitch I don't think is really making a ton of money, or as much money as Amazon would like them to be making. And they are not also getting to rest on their laurels as much as I think they would have liked to by being acquired by Amazon. Noticeably, there has not been a lot of talk about Twitch in the past 6 months or so. So, the Twitch thoughts, I guess, have just settled into their existence, and rage against Twitch thoughts has probably just died down. Anybody like Dr. Disrespect that would have been slightly controversial or something that people would talk about seem to be off the Twitch platform at this point. So, yeah, it definitely feels like, let's see, just activate this. I just don't care what things do at this point. I just don't care at all about Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm burnt out on this game prematurely, particularly because of these festivals, and also just because there's a lot of news today. Yeah, I'm really not seeing a lot of XYZ summoning, notably, happen. Like, wouldn't I be able to XYZ summon something? I wanted to make a brief statement as far as dying video game journalists, in the sense that they're not physically dying, but mainstream video game journalism in itself just dying. There was a massive round of layoffs at G4 and X-Play, and notably Frost, the lady who went on the rant about sexism in gaming in like the first week or two of G4's reboot and caused a whole bunch of controversy. She was not laid off in that massive round of firings. But then she went on Twitter and bragged about not being laid off in the day after it, which inherently, if there are layoffs, there's going to probably be somebody in management that is not 100% happy about layoffs. Not every single middle manager is a mustache twirling villain that's just like, well, blah, ha, ha, I'm so happy I laid off people. There were hard decisions there that really affected people's livelihoods and their emotions. So bragging about not being laid off is uncouth, to say the least. It is childish, definitely, I would say. Also, it is selfish and unprofessional. And so she got fired, I think, almost certainly for that. I'm speculating as to why she was fired, but she was fired pretty much the day later. In general, I wouldn't be surprised if a significant amount of the layoffs have more to do with just the time of year and quarterly earnings reports than actual performance or anything like that. So I'm still very much at the point where I think G4 as a rebooted series has failed miserably and just doesn't even have a clue as to what they were doing or what they could have done to make themselves stand out amongst every other live streamer and YouTuber that does the same thing as X-Play and Attack of the Show or similar things. I also went and looked at Jeff Gersman's solo video game podcast thing he's doing on YouTube and mostly Twitch. And yeah, in 15 episodes since he was kicked off of Giant Bomb, which Giant Bomb also hired like 2 new people this week, two people who'd been laid off from a different company. So the revolving door at Giant Bomb is just continuing to revolve. But yeah, Jeff Gersman, one of the 2 founders and the only surviving founders of Giant Bomb, just doing his own thing. He didn't seem to, for a second, reach out to Nextlander, so maybe there was more of a personal split there. But also, it doesn't really feel like Jeff Gersman is the only problem with Giant Bomb. Like, it's not like they just got rid of a bunch of people who were entrenched and had been working at Giant Bomb for 10 plus years, and then this new Giant Bomb is amazing and great. New Giant Bomb is a confused mess with no interesting characters or personalities for a channel, for a podcast built around people with strong personalities. But yeah, Jeff Gersman alone doesn't know how, still on the 15th episode, really doesn't seem to care or know how to do his own podcast or know how to do the technology. He doesn't seem like he's significantly improved in 15 episodes, and even the fact that he's up to like 15 episodes is questionable because he's like, he really should probably be working his butt off to make as much content as possible. And I guess if he's doing a weekly podcast, it may be 15 weeks ago that he was laid off of Giant Bomb. But yeah, I had almost 100% forgotten he even existed. I definitely am not looking around to see Jeff Gersman's content, and YouTube is not suggesting his content. I see we have somebody called Crying Rain saying passing through, which thanks for passing through, I guess. I'd prefer you stay and watch. That would help me on YouTube. I'd prefer you subscribe to my channel and like the video, but if all I can get is somebody saying hello as they pass through, that's still a good bit of progress or a good interaction to me. I'll take what I can get. There is seemingly a lot of hacking going on, and I don't know if it's potentially a case where there was a vulnerability in software like Slack that almost every game development company used, or if you want to put on a tinfoil hat and conspiratize around it, maybe a lot of these companies literally have like direct connections to each other, that they have VPN connections between 2K and Take-Two and Rockstar. Although I guess maybe I'm also just confused as to which companies are actually parent companies of each other, because 2K, I believe, is the parent company of Rockstar and the GTA 6 leak. Suffice it to say, they have this awful blue background wall of text saying that they have been compromised, and yeah, that's not good. Like, we almost certainly are getting to a point now where records need to be on computers not connected to the internet at all, or not on the computer at all. Like we may get to a point where straight up you should just print your records on paper in like maybe a QR code format, and then scan it back into the computer when you actually need the records, and then print it and delete the records after the fact. That's a pretty crazy idea, certainly, but maybe that's what we're getting to. I was thinking about following Metacritic for user reviews, but yeah, I'm gonna, after thinking about it for a few days, I think I'm gonna abandon that idea. User reviews are delayed by a couple of weeks, so I'd always have to start scrolling down. All I'm really doing is looking at these numbers. At a certain level, it doesn't have quite enough relevancy to me anyways, because the Steam user reviews are good enough. I don't think there's a significant amount of manipulation or untrustworthiness in general as far as user reviews on Steam, and I'm going to be buying the game on Steam, so if there's a specific problem with the Steam version, I would like to know that by the user reviews on Steam. At a certain point, you would have to go to Metacritic if something like the Epic Game Store and all the other game stores became bigger and the vast majority of people weren't playing games through Steam. But the de facto monopoly, whether Valve intended it to exist or not, does seem to center most reviews towards Steam anyways, as far as PC games. With the announcement of the new NVIDIA graphics card as far as PC gaming, I should also say, and with Ethereum moving to a different kind of proof of stake or whatever it is, where GPU cryptocurrency mining with Ethereum is not really viable, even though, frankly, GPU cryptocurrency mining wasn't that viable to start with for the past 6 months or so. We may see a flood of cheaper graphics cards, so it may be a point where it's a decent thought to start to think about building a PC again, whereas it's been incredibly expensive for the past few years to try to get a GPU to build a PC. Like, if you can get a 2080, if you can get a 3080, then for cheap, that would be a good deal. Arguably, you might want to even balance it out by getting a pretty great graphics card and then just a decent motherboard and a pretty great CPU. Inherently, you kind of need to balance your CPU and your GPUs out, so it might be a little stupid to get a really, really powerful graphics card. And then not be able to use it because you're running a very weak CPU. But yeah, I suppose the better move would be to get a 2080 3080 graphics card, then get an 8-core, kind of slow, probably AMD CPU, get a mid-level motherboard that can hold at least 4 slots of a decently high-speed DDR4, I think is what's the current DDR. I know you can start to get DDR5, but I think you skip that. And then you get only 2 sticks of DDR4 memory, so there's room for expansion fairly easily there. And you get a relatively small SSD, something maybe like a Samsung 970 instead of a 980, or a 980 Pro, and leave some room for upgrade there. And then you get a really slow hard drive if you need more space later on. There isn't really a lot of room for upgrades later on down the path, just like putting more RAM in a computer, yes. Putting a bigger, faster SSD in a computer is a hassle, but it's doable. But yeah, or if you already have an existing computer that would really benefit from getting a better graphics card, that might be an idea. Like, ideally, you would like to be able to separate it out, but it never works that way as far as building computers, where you could buy a graphics card one year and then the next year buy a new motherboard, CPU, something like that. But at the very least, I'll say these are thoughts and ideas that you can start having again, whereas for a long time it was pretty much out of the question. Back to video game news. Video Games Chronicle says that Uber is in contact with the FBI over the potential GTA 6 hacker. Why would Uber be involved? Because the hacker, I think, claimed or is suspected to have been the same hacker who also hacked Uber. And certainly you would have to make a pretty big tinfoil hat conspiracy to say that both Rockstar and Uber were connected to the same networks and they had VPNs into each other's network. It would make a lot more sense logically if you use Occam's razor to say that there's potentially a flaw in some kind of VPN software or Slack or some other software they use, and that the flaw has just been applied both ways. Although the stories I've heard mostly come down to just social engineering, and there really isn't a flaw in the security, but they never like to admit that that there's a software flaw, because they don't want to have to rush to fix the software flaw. This is an interesting announcement. The former PlayStation US boss Sean Layden has announced a Tencent role. Layden will help Tencent deepen their activities within the games industry, which at a certain level that is certainly going to put a Western face to a Chinese company like Tencent, which is a good move certainly, because that lets it seem different, in the same way that Nintendo of Japan hires a bunch of people in the United States to make Nintendo of America seem like it is something more than it really is, because all it really is just a localization company that doesn't actually develop any of the games, as far as I can tell. I don't think there might be a couple of games that Nintendo of America actually developed from beginning to end, but I don't think most of them. The Mario games, those other games, all of that is being done by Miyamoto in Japan. It is worth pointing out that Sean Layden was the president of PlayStation US when Sony PlayStation was really being run by the Japanese company, and so he definitely did not have the reins and the authority that the new Sony of California does have. But I also personally would say I don't think Sony of California is really doing the greatest of jobs, and it is kind of crazy regardless that Sony of Japan would have given so much authority to Sony of California and just given up completely on being in charge. Sniper Ranger is on the chat asking if I'm playing Sword Soul. Don't believe so. We're in the XYZ Synchro Festival, and we're trapped in that for the duration of it pretty much. So I am playing the loner deck of whatever that is, and losing horribly with each of the loner decks to slowly grind out 50 points at a game towards getting the rewards. And I'm definitely not paying a lot of attention to it, but also these decks just don't feel like they're particularly viable. This wouldn't be the first festival that has happened on Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the loner decks are not really viable at all, because people were given more than enough time to create meta decks that had a better challenge. And that is just going to widen the gap even more between the free-to-play players and the whales, the people that are paying to win. So that was Dark Blade looming over the Soul Sword. Let's just jump back here, and we'll try intersection of two colors again. Yeah, inherently you would have liked these festivals to reset everything and balance out the pay-to-winners versus the free-to-players, but of course Bandai Namco doesn't want it to work out that way. So they're giving you loner decks that I think they thought were going to be viable, but I'm not sure that, particularly in this case, they are viable at all. And it still doesn't really matter much, because you have to understand what the cards do, and I just am not going to really understand all of that. Yeah. Sniper Ranger says the Pendulum deck is trash without their Link monster. It's trash without the Link monster. Which, yeah, for what is supposed to be an XYZ Link monster, if there is a card in the Pendulum Zone, add one Pendulum monster or Pendulum spell trap from your deck to your hand. Alright, we'll activate that and see what we can do. If we can get like a spell card, we might do something different. So far, I think all the loner decks are trash. But I also can't spend the time and can't care enough to spend the time to try and build a custom deck. I could play my Zodiac deck if I get rid of all of the extra cards, but then it's not really going to win without the extra cards, and I think that would be the case for a lot of meta decks as they're played now, is that you play out of the extra deck so often. In a lot of ways, this festival is forcing you to a very limited potential extra deck cards. And there was a festival that's happened before where you just can't have anything in the extra deck, which then just limits you to playing effect monsters and strong monsters. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says PlayStation Plus first classic PS1 game has finally added its 50-60 Hz region switching option. I think there is a slight difference between PAL in Europe and the 50 Hz that you might get in Japan. So I wouldn't be surprised if some games at some point have a PAL layout in Japan. Yeah, and I'm definitely glad that we are no longer really having to worry about 50 Hz, 60 Hz, PAL versus NTSC interlacing. Let's see. Apparently, Sackboy is coming to PC, being confirmed after database entries adds Big Adventures icons. Steam database entries suspected being related to the platformer appeared last year. But yeah, they could just be experimenting with that without actually having the full commitment. It would be weird, I think, at this point to try and go back and play Sackboy. You could probably do it fairly well, but you would... you probably wouldn't get as much from it as you would think you would. Special summon this, I guess. I think a lot, if I'm recalling correctly, unless there's been a couple different Sackboy games, a lot of what Sackboy was a game engine to make mini games inside of itself, and doing that on PC seems contradictory to the idea that you could just install Unity or Unreal and make a different type of game or a better game, or you could even just go back and play something like Gary's Mod. And in the same way, like Gary's Mod really wouldn't sell today if it came out just now, or if it had been on console up until this point and it is just now being released on PC. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Atlas claims it won't announce a new Persona during the next month's live show. It's been 6 years since Persona 5 was first released in Japan. Yeah, they probably don't have a new Shin Megami Tensei game at all that they would announce. You could make an early announcement certainly for Shin Megami Tensei like 6 in the main line, even though they just released 5, and I may be getting the numbers wrong in my head there. Or you could announce another Soul Hackers game, but they really listed Soul Hackers just a couple weeks ago. Or you could announce perhaps a new game that is in the same universe but is a new branch, a new spin-off game yet again. I almost wonder if there isn't kind of a desire for Atlas to grow up away from the Persona series. These relationship dungeon crawlers as a gameplay mechanic do seem to sell fairly well, but I think more and more they want to get away from the teenagers and the storytelling there, for censorship reasons and just for just a fact that their audience themselves are aging a little bit too. It could be we finally hit a generation of Japanese people that aren't incredibly nostalgic about their high school days because they've decided to have a different outlook on life and not just do like their parents and commit themselves to a lifetime of working the same job and being miserable. We may very well have a new generation of Japanese who are going to have life outside of work and not work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Yep, and that certainly can change your perspective when you start to have good in your present life when you're older versus just being trapped and nostalgic about your high school lives. Although also I'd say worldwide there is a weirdness around how much difference there is between your school life, your elementary school, middle school, high school, college life is compared to what an adult life tends to be. Yeah, if there's one loner deck that I think is terrible, I would say it's this Ghost Trick deck, but maybe there is some strategy to this Ghost Trick deck that I just don't understand. Definitely seems to start from the idea that you have to have one of these on the field, which probably starts from the idea that you need to flip summon one Ghost Trick before you can start summoning other Ghost Tricks, and then these Ghost Trick characters are pretty weak, so I'm assuming that there's something more to it than that. Let's see. Almost certainly it's not a smart move to activate an effect like that. Change this card's to face down defense position. When this card's flipped face down, you can add one card from your deck to your hand. Let's do that later. Let's pick a character that does the most amount of attack here. Or is this going to be 1200 damage? This really feels like one of those decks that yeah, this definitely feels like one of those decks where you would have to play it and learn it way longer than the festival is going to take. Right. I think I want to activate this. Put that face down. And I think I want to activate this and flip that face down. And that means these can't be attacked. Interesting. But I can be directly attacked. And this is the most progress I've made with this loner deck so far. Moving on with news, we want to try and burn through it fairly quickly. I'd like to get back to playing Darksiders 3 today. Although I have other things I probably should be working on too. Alright, so a certain level, though, if you are just going to if you're just gonna not play, then obviously it's gonna be easy for the other player. Let's go ahead and summon this. Let's go ahead and activate this. Okay. With 4 characters on the field, I can get an 1800. Start with that. Take that one, and then that one. Then we can get this one. Then we can activate this. Guess we'll do that and attach that. Not really sure what this does. When this card material on this card becomes 10, you win the duel. You can detach one material to add one Ghost Trick Trail spell from the deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can attach a Ghost Trick card from your hand to the material. Interesting. So, attack here, attack here, attack here. And then probably gonna win before I could win the duel with this Ghost Trick effect. So, this one can't be flipped face down. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says EA says that the Call of Duty Xbox exclusively would be a tremendous opportunity for Battlefield, which I guess EA is all for Call of Duty being a exclusive, although I don't think that has anything to do with the Activision Blizzard acquisition, but it certainly has the overtones of, hey, if the Activision Blizzard acquisition happens, then both Call of Duty and Battlefield may in the future be exclusive to Microsoft's consoles and PC. Apple has confirmed that it's increasing App Store prices in some regions next month, but the UK and US stores won't be affected. So, yeah, I don't know how many people are really buying apps on Apple and iOS though. Like, I kind of feel like there's probably a slightly higher ratio, which is to say there probably is very few people that actively buy a lot of extra apps on Apple. They more than likely just live with the Apple apps that come with it, and I don't think Apple actually charges you for any of its apps. Maybe like Vegas is technically owned by Apple, maybe. I don't even know if that's true, but I don't think there probably is even a Vegas for iOS. Bandai Namco really going the extra mile to not confirm anything, Bandai Namco says they, quote, can't deny that personal information was leaked in the Asian data breach. A recent hack was reportedly limited to the company Toys and Hobby business. So that's interesting. That's the first time I've had any network trouble since I finally got my router set up the way I think it should be set up. So I would definitely chalk that up to just the game. So yeah, yet another hack from Bandai Namco, and they may legitimately be saying we can't deny it because we haven't investigated it or we don't know for certain, but they may just be trying to be coy. And that, just because it was the Asia branch that was hacked doesn't mean that non-Asian information wasn't leaked. Interesting. Twice in a row there. Let's see. Well, we'll take a moment here to take a break from playing. See, as far as Duel in the exhibition, we got all 10 of that done. XYZ summoning monsters, we've only done 3 out of 30. And we have 8 days to do the rest. Synchro summon monsters in exhibition. I don't know if we can do that with any of the loner decks. And then normal summon monsters. We've made some progress there. As far as the daily quests, everything except for inflict damage to the enemy has been completed. So we need to play a little bit more. And yeah. Hopefully we can get all of this. If we don't get all of this, we're not losing a ton of crystals, but we did spend some crystals, and any little bit would help. And inherently, I'm just at gold tier 4, which is not really anywhere for the season. Like this is ending the 29th, this is ending the 30th, so at best I have a few hours to try to get higher up in rank, and I'm just not going to actually do it. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. New Xbox Game Pass titles for console and PC and cloud have been dated. This includes Deathloop, Grounded, and Valheim. This is from Video Games Chronicles. Like Danganronpa version 3 or volume 3 anniversary edition, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch remastered, Road 96 Shadowrun Return, Dragonfall and Hong Kong, The War of Mine, and Torment Tides of Numeria. And then several games are leaving the Game Pass system, and people really don't pay attention to that, like Slime Rancher, Subnautica. If you're not done playing these games, you have only a little bit of time to catch up and play them. Inherently, that's the problem I have most with Netflix, is that things disappear on Netflix without any warning. And I don't know if it's better if you did get warning, but they just don't stay around, and I just don't like that feeling more than I even care about the actual videos getting taken down or not. Like, if I really cared about the videos on Netflix, I'd probably want to buy DVDs. And noticeably, even for like Stranger Things, I don't think there is any DVD releases or Blu-ray releases, I guess now, of Stranger Things. And that'll be interesting to see if they break from that once the Stranger Things series is done, because it really would make some sense to put a box set of the entire series of Stranger Things on Blu-ray in a Walmart and try and get the small percentage of people who don't know what Netflix is, don't care about Netflix, into watching Stranger Things and using that as potentially a way of getting a new generation of non-Netflix users, particularly if you sold the box set of Stranger Things fairly cheaply and it included a free month of Netflix in it. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says a Sony ex-dev is working with Team Ninja on Rise of Ronin. The game will be a PS5 console exclusive when it's released in 2024. Which... So ex-dev is a Japanese development team owned by Sony, I suppose. But yeah, I'm still not really sure what Sony of Japan is focusing in on or what they're trying to do. I imagine if I was to venture a guess, they're probably trying to focus on making Japanese games and just making good games, and then handing all of the hardware and announcement duties over to Sony of California. And then once Sony potentially has some success, I wouldn't be surprised if they swoop in and take control away from Sony of California. It could also be that Sony of Japan is leaning more towards the idea of making a PlayStation 6, and so they are just going to secretly be in development for the next 3 to 6 years around a PlayStation 6, and they've just kind of abandoned the PlayStation 5 prematurely to Sony of California to handle. Moving on, that's just speculation. EA's Motive Studio confirms that a new single-player Iron Man game is in development, which, okay. I question how an Iron Man game is really going to play, or if it will play well. There is also, I suppose, maybe a question about Motive Studio. Like, I don't know why they're showing me the Dead Space remake trailer here. Unless Motive previously developed Star Wars Squadron and is currently handling EA's Dead Space remake, so they're hoping to be done with the Dead Space remake fairly quickly, I guess, to move on to the Iron Man studio, the Iron Man game. The Dead Space remake is definitely something that feels like it was an afterthought and is not really gonna probably have that much polish or impact. There's a high danger that the remake just doesn't feel like the first game, and even if it does feel like the first game, it's really just going to show you the first game a second time, without probably changing too much. The best thing I think they could do is give it maybe a completely different ending, and push the universe in a different direction. Inherently, the spoiler for the first game is that Isaac's girlfriend had been dead the whole time, and he was crazy and just hallucinating his girlfriend, and he knew she had been dead the whole time. So if you want to make a remake, if you want to go in an alternate universe, you have her be implied to be dead the whole time earlier in the game, or you just let most players know that she was dead the whole time, and then you do the switcheroo and show that actually she's alive, or that maybe she's even reincarnated based on the necromorphia technology, but she's still thinking and has powers and fighting on your side. And then you create a universe that seems like Isaac can really beat the necromorphs, and that the world isn't just doomed to die in an apocalypse. And you put some hope into it, and by putting some hope into it, what deck am I even playing? What am I even playing? I'm confused as to what deck I'm playing. Am I even playing in the XYZ festival? What does this do? That's probably just auto placement of the cards. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm even doing. Let me look at this deck. Yeah, this was my zoo deck, but built around what you could really do. What does this one do? Well, this is going to be a nightmare. Let's see, you can do that. But I don't have any cards. And he's going to take forever, no matter what I do. So ideally you would just activate something. Ideally you just activate something and be done with it, so then I can just summon a whole bunch of these and be ridiculous as far as getting daily quests done. And hopefully that's all I could accomplish. Alright. See, otherwise, you toss this into the card. You do that. You activate that. You toss that. You activate that. You take this. Go ahead and set that there. But I can't do anything else, and I should have put that in defense mode. And I probably lose on this turn. And I didn't really special summon anything. I don't know what I clicked that would have gotten me into playing this deck, because I knew this deck was going to be completely unplayable when I made it. Video Games Chronicles, continuing through the news. The GeForce RTX 40 series GPUs have been revealed. They're claiming to be 2 to 4 times faster than the 390 Ti, and they're ranging between $900 and $1,600. These also are, I think, the ones that are going to be huge and chunky looking at them and use a ridiculous amount of power, potentially pushing the amount of power that they require above what even a 1200 or even 1500 power supply could offer you. I guess circuit wise 1500 power supplies is about the highest you could get, and 1200 is more realistic as far as the highest you would actually get. But it definitely paints a weird picture as far as just how much they're trying to push new products. I don't really trust a 2 to 4 times faster thought. Something obviously will be 2 to 4 times faster, but that doesn't mean everything will be. 16 gigabytes of GDR6X is still maybe a little low as far as RAM, but like ideally I would like to be in the future and be up to 32 or 64 gigabytes of graphics RAM in particular. Faster RAM though could be the balance there. But even the $900 one is 12 gigabytes of RAM, so you're going to get a lot of RAM. Improved ray tracing, improved deep learning, super sampling, version 3. These are the gimmicks that NVIDIA in particular tries to put in every new generation of their cards to justify selling their new cards. But particularly for first generations of the 40,000 series, this is not the best time to be 100% certain on that. But they're moving through the series fairly quickly. Also, they also, as a sales thing, have made a free DLC if you own Portal called Portal with ray tracing that fairly drastically changes the way Portal looks, the first Portal game. And so I'll probably want to look at that at some point next time I get the itch to play Portal 1 again. But it's odd that Valve just is letting them do that, make that demo, and there are these other 35 games are going to support this new tech. Yeah, Portal RTX is an official mod for Portal, and it's different than the rest of these games that are just claiming they're going to get updates to support the 4090. Yeah, this is going to be frustrating to say the least. Like it's already gotten frustrating for day one, and I'm already frustrated with the Synchro XYZ Festival. Video Games Chronicles has a more in-depth article here talking about bringing ray tracing to Portal with the RTX version. But it's not just the ray tracing that changes the looks. It's pretty much giving a different feeling and a different lighting to all the textures and making the game look very different. So it doesn't feel like it's really living up to or honoring the original game. Like, just look how dark that glass is and how dark the room is. Like, this is probably yeah, that's a great example of just how much they've changed and retextured things. The cubes look completely different. It is probably the video game equivalent of what one of the Disney live action remakes of a Disney animated movie is, in the sense that it is really just very different of an experience. But different isn't inherently bad either. It gives you an excuse to go back and play Portal, and you can always play it in its original form, or you can play it in its remastered form. So this is also a odd mod slash side remaster, and it does make an interesting statement about where Valve's head is at, that they either don't care about Portal or they care enough about Portal that they are going to let NVIDIA make a game around their licensed product and still advertise it and talk about it. It would have felt like a few years ago that Valve would have said, absolutely not, we're going to not advertise Portal 1, because then people are just going to complain about there not being a Portal 3, and then people are going to complain about there not being a Half-Life 3. And most of Valve's game development decisions seem to be, at least in part, inspired by avoiding people complaining about there not being a Half-Life 3. Right. Summon this, I guess. Activate this. Summon this. Okay. We can do this. Or we could do this. So I guess we'll do this. Why did I put it there? Yeah, and that's pretty much all I think I can do. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says September's PlayStation Plus games catalog titles are now available to claim. You can get Deathloop, The Sly Collection, and Siphon Filter 2. It's kind of funny how these games cycle out around the 20th instead of on the first day of the month. There is a longer list, obviously, here of games that you can play. And noticeably, there isn't a list here of games that are leaving, even though I imagine some games do occasionally leave. Maybe they don't on the PlayStation Network as much. Let's see. A family-friendly co-op shooter called From Space is releasing in November, according to Video Games Chronicles, although I don't know what specifically makes something family-friendly when you think about, perhaps, Splatoon, and why you wouldn't want to be playing Splatoon 3 right now if you're looking for a family-friendly co-op shooter. From Space is going to be on Steam, Stadia, and Nintendo Switch, and it was delayed earlier this month, so I don't even remember it. I think this has been confirmed now that Ted Lasso is coming to FIFA 23, the actor, fictional American football coach who became a UK soccer coach on Apple TV. Like, he would just be a skin for a coach and not really a character I would imagine you can control. So there's not a lot there other than some nostalgia for Ted Lasso, which I think Ted Lasso is a good series, but it's not a complete show yet, and it still has a lot of potential to go bad in later seasons, if later seasons get made, or also for it to be fairly short as an experience. I still fully believe that Apple TV is pretty much the worst offering of potential streaming content. They have very little custom stuff. Or right, I guess I still can't do anything. Yeah, this Ghost Trick deck is terrible. Let's see. A cheat seller sued by Bungie is now counter-suing Bungie for hacking and DMCA violations. Aim Junkies also claims that Bungie illegally reverse engineered its own cheat software. Which, yeah, at a certain point, if you're getting sued, countersuing is about the only thing you can do, and throwing as much spaghetti at the wall or slinging as much mud as possible is going to help them there. So they're basically saying Bungie violated the DMCA by circumventing the cheat software's own protection measures and reverse engineering the software. Which, yeah. Wouldn't that be funny if Bungie goes out of its way to sue a cheat maker and then ends up losing in court against the cheat maker, and this creates this odd precedence where cheat makers are emboldened and safer to make cheat software. At a certain level, maybe that'd even help consumers a little bit more, but they're particularly talking about, I think, Destiny cheats. So you're cheating and making the experience worse for other people on top of your benefiting yourself. If you were just cheating in a single player game, I wouldn't complain too much about that. Although, you know, it kind of sucks when you have gamers out there that are just actually bad gamers who think they're good gamers because they're cheating through everything, or they have walkthroughs on here. At least I think I have a healthy understanding that I suck at a lot of games, and I wouldn't say the vast majority, but I suck at a lot of games, definitely, and when I go to a walkthrough and have to cheat, it is an admitting of defeat, particularly for YouTube, whereas I might stick with a game a little bit longer before going to a walkthrough if I wasn't making YouTube content. But even if I didn't stick with the game, I might just give up on the game instead of going to look at a walkthrough. What's this gonna do? Well, that screwed me over. Whatever. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Madden NFL 23 and the PlayStation 5 topped US games industry sales in August, which hardware and video games both topping a listing seems weird. Guess we have to click on this and see how this really breaks down. Yeah, this seems to all be software. So let's see where the PlayStation 5 hardware would have been mentioned. This is a pretty bad way to do this compared to the Japanese list. Like, it's not telling you which consoles these games are on, so you have comparisons like Mario Kart here, which is Switch only, versus Madden, which could be PlayStation and Xbox combined. Notably, Saints Row is in the second place, which really, these two numbers just show that people in the US are kind of suckers and will buy any of the new games without doing any real research, which definitely highlights the value in video game criticism and consumer advice. You don't start to get to numbers that start to make some sense until you have like Marvel's Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was 84th last month and is 3rd this month, and that seems very random. And then Elden Ring makes some sense too. But then you have like Far Cry 6 way down here, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it seems fairly just random, the sales numbers in the US. Alright. Slowly making progress, though. But if you don't win, you're not getting the rewards either at the end of the game. So you're not getting any of the pack rewards or gym rewards. So if I was just to lose over and over again, working my way to at least, I would say 1200, 1100, 11,000. Yeah. If I was to make it to this point the hard way, I'm not heavily motivated to go further. And even if I do go further, if I'm losing all the time, you're not going to get the legacy pack tickets. So I need to figure out one of these decks that is, at the very least, the beginning of a deck that is actually playable. Let's see. Pokemon Go Fashion Week, we'll see Pokemon wearing a fashionable costume, which definitely takes Pokemon in a different direction and opens up the door to a question of, are all Pokemon naked by default? I mean, I guess you kind of have to assume they are, and they just don't have visible external genitalia. I see a hat here. I see a hat here. Really don't see anything here. If this is supposed to be clothing or anything here. And inherently, you can't mention fashion around the new Pokemon game and not once again point out how terrible the fashion is for the playable characters in these weird, short kind of school uniforms. That I guess the idea is that they might very well be in a school. Yeah. And even these outfits look better than this does. So this is Pokemon Go outdoing the new Pokemon game. Yeah, it seems like some of the Pokemon will have outfits, but also some of the characters will have outfits. Some of the random characters, I don't know if these characters have actual names. Some of the humans. But yeah, it's weird for Pokemon potentially to go into fashion. It's already a gacha game, so when you start talking about what are effectively just more skins on a gacha game, or it's close enough to a gacha game, it's not quite that. Pokemon Go might actually be a gacha game, but the main Pokemon games don't have you paying any real world money to try to get other Alright, special summon this. Space up and attack. And let's see if we can do anything else. Time pendulum graph. On the other hand, it probably isn't a terrible idea for them to try and get away from just having to make a whole bunch of new Pokemon every new game, and instead having skins of some sort, whether it is just Pikachu in a Hawaiian shirt type skins. And so, yeah. If they said that there were going to be considerably fewer new Pokemon, particularly as they move from the flat 2D sprite animations to 3D sprite animations for all the old Pokemon, which they still haven't fully accomplished that, it'd give you an excuse to use fashion as a distraction there. Moving on, Minecraft and BBC are partnering on Frozen Planet 2 educational content, which, yeah, Minecraft constantly trying to be educational and justify its existence on the computers at schools. Whereas I imagine a lot of schools at this point would never tolerate Minecraft of any form or fashion on their computers. Too many parents and too many teachers already tired of hearing kids talk about Minecraft. If kids are even that interested in Minecraft anymore. I imagine they still are, but probably not to the extreme levels they once would have been. Video Game Chronicle says it looks like The Undertaker and Becky Lynch are coming to Rainbow Six Siege, which every time you see The Undertaker being depicted digitally, he's getting further and further away from how he actually looks as he gets older and older, and I guess that's true for everybody, but he's pretty old to start with, and they keep drawing him potentially even younger each time. And then notably, when you have two characters side by side like this, they made it look like Becky Lynch is much more broad-shouldered and thicker thighs and as tall as The Undertaker, which is just kind of ridiculous. Now The Undertaker claims to be really tall, as many wrestlers do, but he's actually wearing very tall boots, and they just add a few inches to everybody's height. I hope that's a good move I just made. I really don't have anything to say about Becky Lynch as a wrestler because I really didn't see her. She's a newer wrestler compared to the last time I paid any attention to wrestling. I assume McMahon is still out of the picture at WWE, but I haven't seen any announcement of any major changes otherwise. Let's see, Sony's Yoshida says indies will take the risks on PlayStation VR 2. He pretty much has to say that, considering there's no backward compatibility and they desperately want PlayStation VR 2 to succeed, so I don't see any reason why an independent developer, though, would take any risk at all, let alone making their game exclusive to a PlayStation VR 2. Maybe this is where Sony of Japan's head is at also, is that they see, instead of making a PlayStation 5 or 6 being the future, they see PlayStation VR being the future. But yeah, that doesn't seem right. That really doesn't seem like something that would actually work. Yeah, I don't want to summon that yet, so I'm gonna see if... Let's activate this ability. Banish this card. Summon a token. Activate that. And hope that works. So we got a couple tokens now. These are tuner, non-tuner cards, so take one of those and that. We'll just try and activate everything. And yeah, I scared them away, so good on that. Although at this point, I've been going 2 hours and 24 minutes, and while there is a ton of work that still needs to happen, as far as playing the festival, I'm gonna just have to stop at this point and burn through the news. Otherwise, we're gonna go for 4 hours of streaming, and I don't want to do that. And see, again, you're only gonna get rewards if you actually win. But yeah, if we're at 2,000 now, 11,000 is the goal in 8 days. It feels doable. And as far as progress, we're normal summoning. We've really not synchro summoned anything, and we've got an XYZ summon. We have a bunch of daily quests again and login stuff, so I will need to play just more Duel Live to do. Yeah, we're getting our crystals up slowly after spending a bunch. Babylon's Fall apparently is being given away for free at some stores. The game is ending service in February, so it's absolutely useless. I don't know why you would give the game away for free, though. What manipulation of your accounting does that help you to give a game away for free? Is it worth it to give away a copy for free and get somebody in the store versus destroying the copy and demanding credits or refunds from Square Enix, which maybe Square Enix doesn't have a game that could credit them for anyways, or maybe Square Enix is playing hardball. Yeah. It definitely seems like that is not the way you would do that. You would write it off as a loss, because effectively these were $60 games, I believe, originally. So if you destroy it and say this is $60 in losses for GameStop that you can write off on your generally accepted accounting procedures, which is just a long phrase for lying in accounting, why not take that? Perhaps it's a case that, particularly for GameStop, and obviously this is GameStop, you can tell by this power logo, they may have so many losses anyways that they don't have anything more they can write off. So maybe that's why they're giving it away for free. I wouldn't say that. That's a smart move, though. Sorry, I'm having to rub my eyes. They're a little watery, and I'm looking at my TV, and I'm like, man, that looks a little blurry. Let's see. 2K support says it has been hacked and warns customers to reset their passwords. We had kind of talked about this, but not really. But check that out at Video Games Chronicles if you need more details, or just go straight to 2K. They've put out 8 minutes of Scorn gameplay, which is something I want to see, certainly, because we've seen a lot of the HR Giger-esque visuals around Scorn and teasers and trailers, but we haven't been really shown what the actual game is and how it's going to play. In a lot of ways, it's very possibly going to be similar to, let's see what happens if we do that. Really shouldn't do full screen, but I imagine this is going to be very similar to the game Agony, in which you're, at least to some extent, walking around an area and enjoying the view, or hating the view in this case, of the area. That it would be kind of a walking simulator game with some puzzles. If there's actual attacks and enemies, that would be an improvement, certainly. Agony in particular tried to sell itself very hard on the visuals, and then turned out to to really suck on the gameplay aspects, and I wouldn't be surprised if Scorn has that same potential to be bad like that, and I hope it isn't, but who knows. Interesting, you're starting off, it seems, woken up naked on a ship. It looks like a ship, feels like a ship, and you're going through what seems to be more of kind of a dungeon-esque potential environment. So I wouldn't be surprised if you are actually working your way through more of a dungeon experience. Let's not watch all of this and skip ahead some. Okay, you've got some kind of thing you stick your fist in. Yeah, this is probably the first few minutes of gameplay. And from that you now have some kind of weapon, it seems. I guess that'll teach him not to stick his hands in random weird devices. So that plugs in one device and then sucks out blood, it looks like, for the next device. So it's like blood machinery. And you're solving the puzzle to open the door. There's even a heads-up display showing you that. This notably also doesn't feel like the Succubus game, which I'm not sure that Succubus game was as bad as people were expecting it to be, in that it was mostly selling itself as a lot of nudity as a game. Inherently though, with YouTube's slight potential change of how they're going to treat adult content being shown, I still don't think we're really getting to a point where the game, which I think was literally called Succubus, so it seems like you need to find somebody that can hold the door open. Find an assistant. And I guess here's your assistant. They faded out. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of grotesque body horror. It doesn't even really feel like it's staying in line with the with like an H.R. Giger game, and instead it seems like they've worked themselves into their own art style that's just slightly inspired by it. So you get back to this point, and that unlocks that door. They're not really showing you how it does. Notably though, if this is the gameplay that they're showing you, that's the gameplay that the game, I think, has. Maybe out of that initial area you start to get a gun and a weapon. There look like there might be a gun there. But not sure I fully believe that to be what's going on. Well, that is more, certainly, about Scorn than we've seen as far as actual gameplay, and it doesn't look terrible. It doesn't look like it's pandering towards horror or body horror or nudity as much as it is more focused on gameplay, and that's probably the right way to develop a game, because if these extreme niche games are going to succeed, we need a few building steps, like beginner steps, of games that are slightly going in that direction but aren't pushing it to the extreme as far as possible, particularly when the censorship is fairly high in video games at the moment, and a lot of games that were pushing the limits are now recoiling it towards being more censored and watered down versions of games. Um, so, yeah, I do want to see games push the limits, but there probably should be something between Scorn and, say, Resident Evil Village. Although Resident Evil Village and Scorn may not be that far off in its visuals, really. Anyways, moving on. The new PlayStation VR 2 trailer invites players to feel the new Real, which is effectively a Video Games Chronicle article talking about an advertisement, so not really necessary. Not really necessary to talk about that article. Gearbox has said that the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is clearly a new franchise after the Shattering Targets. Future experiences are already under development at Gearbox, says Randy Pitchford, which any day Randy Pitchford can be in the news for a good reason is a good day for Randy Pitchford, and any day he's not in the news is a good day for most other people. Now, inherently, you have to remember that the Borderlands series, almost certainly including Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, are all owned by 2K, not Embracer Group. Unless Embracer Group and 2K are owned by the same people, which I don't think they are. So it really is up to 2K to say whether or not they want more Tiny Tina games or not. And if they go that way, personally, I kind of don't care. Like, I'm not sure that there's enough fandom that cares one way or the other. Borderlands 3 was lacklusterly received. Not people just didn't really care about it. We would like to see, I imagine, a Borderlands 4 eventually, but if you took 5 to 6 years to make a Borderlands 4, I don't think people would really care. If you just continuously make Tiny Tina's Wonderlands fantasy games, people would lose interest in that too. There isn't really an overarching narrative or story around the Borderlands games. So you could certainly have a Borderlands set completely in space, and that might be good or might be bad. You could have a Borderlands set in prehistoric times fighting dinosaurs, and that might be good and that might be bad. In fact, the Borderlands series probably is best if it just becomes the What If series of comics that they once made, where almost every game takes you into a different area and a different narrative story, which that was the original idea that was portrayed anyways, is that every story, every game from the Borderlands series is just a story being made up. So yeah, shooting dinosaurs, shooting giant insects, going into the past, going into the future. All they have to really do is have slight writing and visuals that feel like Borderlands, and you can call almost anything a Borderlands series. And guns, I imagine, have to be included in the Borderlands series too. But there is definitely a danger that people just get bored with the Borderlands series in the same way that they eventually got bored with Call of Duty and Battlefield and plenty of other series. Halo. There is no finish the fight narrative really around Borderlands like Halo, though, so they can stop at any time and they can take a break at any time. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article for today is that Ted Lasso and AFC Richmond have been confirmed for FIFA 23. I guess AFC Richmond is a fake soccer club, so that being added does mean a little bit of a different visuals there. Let's see. Also is going to include the characters from Ted Lasso that were soccer players. So Jamie Tart, Danny Rojas, Sammy Obsanya, Roy Kent, and Isaac McAdoo. Notably, the side coach, the secondary coach, is not mentioned as being included, nor the water boys that turned into the third coach. Just Ted Lasso. As far as the Gamatsu articles today, we have very few. There's only about 6, so I wonder if there's just not that many announcements because of Tokyo Game Show having happened, or if this is just a case that Gamatsu didn't put out a lot of articles. House of the Dead remake is coming to Xbox Series on September 23rd, according to Gamatsu. The roguelike action platformer Trinity Fusion has been announced for consoles and PCs. Do we have something here that would give us a general idea of what the game is? Yeah, I guess so. Looks like it might be something worth looking at. It always surprises me how the camera just being zoomed in a little bit more can give you a very different experience. Wow, that is a pretty brutal way to die. But yeah, a lot of games I feel like these days are zoomed out too much. I would say Darksiders 3 is zoomed in too much, and the hallways and places you're fighting in Darksiders 3 often are smaller than they should be. Yes, some kind of like you can transform / split your soul and do all kinds of Metroidvania movement actions. But these enemies also feel like they're tanks in that you have to really get a big combo to beat them up. I guess that's where the Trinity comes from, is that 3 people have been fused. I also noticed that in one section of Darksiders 3, enemies were literally just coming out of the walls and just kind of being portaled from the edges of the walls. And that's not a terrible thought. Seeing more games do that instead of monster closets. Just have things have a portal on the wall and come out from the wall. Our Fantasia to the End of the Wilderness has a Tokyo Game Show interview with Akifumi Kaneko, which there's some screenshots here also. Arguably this might be a little too zoomed out, but there might be times when there are actually enemies around. Let's see. We already talked about the Dreadout developer Digital Happiness announcing Graveless for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. We talked about this on the last stream. I was very confused as to what Dreadout is. Dreadout is a 3D horror game with a Japanese schoolgirl. And this is a 3D horror game with a Reaper adult woman. So they're going more in that direction for this series. The most recent Fatal Frame game, speaking of Japanese games with schoolgirls, has said cryptically that some of the costumes on the PC version of the latest Fatal Frame game will be changed. Now, the previous release had a swimsuit removed, not, I think, even changed or replaced with anything, and then it had 2 new Nintendo exclusive outfits. There was like a Zero Samus suit that was removed, and like a Princess Peach skin that was removed. And that kind of makes some sense that the Nintendo ones would not come over. But the swimsuit also is just more from a censorship. Let's not go with the silly swimsuit outfit. Although, particularly for horror games, I think it is a tradition that should be upkept to have silly outfits and even sexy lewd outfits in horror games as a counterbalance, if that's what the creators really want to do. But I do think the Fatal Frame series is trying to be more mainstream with every iteration, and we're going to see the Japanese schoolgirls not shown in that light anymore, even though there's been kind of a tradition around that. Moving on, Gamatsu says the Ultra Age free DLC Rebirth project is now available for PC and is coming soon to the PS4 and Switch. Ultra Age Rebirth project, not a game I immediately recognize. Is this a MMO? It doesn't look like much. Seems like you just wander around dungeons and do action JRPG beat 'em up sections. Very repetitive arena rooms. Not particularly interesting visually designed enemies. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with that. Gamatsu also has the article. Sean Layden has joined Tencent Games as a strategic advisor. The quote here is, "I am thrilled to continue this journey of discovery." Noticeably, if you look behind him, he is standing in front of a trophy case that seems to have a lot of trophies on it. Not as many as it could have on the case here, but decent amount of trophies. Although I also don't recognize a lot of these trophies. Like this person with the hands holding up, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and this one is kind of more of a gold, where this is more of a silver, so maybe you got second place on some things. And then everything's just out of focus on everything else. So yeah, standing in front of trophies just to give the general idea. I have to think that the screen here, the door, is frosted glass also. But yeah, also I would also say that these trophies may have been trophies that were given to him because he was the president of Sony of America, and really these are just his copy of what developers for like The Last of Us got. Because you'd be surprised how many people get a trophy from a lot of these places, as far as just if you're willing to pay for a trophy, you'll get a trophy if you're in any way involved. It does speak to ego, certainly, more than anything. And yeah, again, this statement on professional dress here, you have him wearing a sweater over what looks like a shirt, and then I think this is potentially a Bluetooth headphone headset, and then he's got a Fitbit, and then a like maybe Kabbalah wristband. But yeah, and having your arms crossed for your photos, it's not really a great photo either. There's definitely a better way that a good photographer would have framed this. You definitely would have gotten rid of the red here. This red just screams as a distraction, and it has a pretty ugly appearance in the first place. So I would have said, let's move this chair, let's have you stand in front of this, let's have you hold an award in front of a trophy of awards, let's have you lose the wristwatch, lose the band, lose the headphones, let's put on a tie, lose the sweater, Like, this obviously is a lit shot, so he would have been under camera lights. There's no need for the sweater, I'm sure. But I'm just talking about the photo at this point. We'll see what his involvement with Tencent really is, if any. Being a strategic advisor may just be an excuse to get a paycheck out of Tencent, and he may do very little that actually helps. Let's see. Moving on, Komatsu says Persona Super Live P Sound Wish 2022 Cross Journey will not feature new game announcements. A concert-only concert, which I guess that's what all this is the title in Japanese being translated to English for a concert. Like, I can not really even recognize that these are Persona characters the way this is drawn. And I'm just not familiar with the most recent Persona characters anyways. A fast-paced first-person shooter called Super Buff HD has been announced for the PS4 and 5 and Xbox One and Series, Switch and PC. Which, yeah. It looks weird. I don't know if that really is going to translate into a game people want to play. Weird first-person shooters probably aren't going to succeed. Like, the weirdest first-person shooters we have are Borderlands, and even that's not that weird. It's just kind of funny. And then the game Summertime Rendering Another Horizon introduces a game original character named Kaori Kayuba, which tells me that Summertime Rendering is probably a sequel to another visual novel, or it is a visual novel based on, yeah, it says it here, based on a manga and anime series. I don't recognize this anime though, so either it isn't out or it isn't that popular, would be my guess. Although this is a new character, so they're not actually showing me any images that I would recognize from Summertime Rendering. Alright, and then we've just got a lot. Oh, I wanted to mention that there is a Steam sale going on, and we should just point that out. The Bash, as it were, is just fighting games that they're trying to push. Muso, free demos, spectacle fighters, character action games, hack and slash games. Although, notably, they're also just highlighting things that are on my wish list, like Blades of Time, Escape from Dead Island, and the Dishwasher Vampire Smile. Or, much better to highlight popular games on my wish list, like God of War, or Devil May Cry 5. It's been a while, frankly, since I've bought games, so things like Hades 40% off would be a good deal for me. Persona 5 Strikers, which is the Persona fighting game, might be something. I don't know if Pirate Warriors 4 is a good deal. Replicant 50% off is a good deal. I don't know if Mortal Shell really is a good deal. No, not the Warhammer 40k games. So yeah, some discounts and some sales here before we get to potentially a Black Friday sale. And I would say that pre-ordering a game is probably a mistake, but anything you see on sale right now is more than likely going to be on the same amount of discount or only slightly more of a discount during Black Friday, but also runs the risk of not being on a discount at all. Neptunia Senran Kagura game. Some of these more niche anime games are going to have less likelihood of getting fully discounted, so like getting this down 35% to $19.49 is probably the best you're going to get. Or getting Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon for $7.99 is probably the best you're going to get. And like Blades of Time is one I need to buy before I play X-Blades, since that is like the spiritual successor. $10 for Torchlight 3, even though Torchlight 3 is not good. Might be a consideration. Doing a Sword Art Online game at this point, though, for me doesn't make a lot of sense. Attack on Titan's still fairly popular, so it would make sense to cover that. But yeah, any of the Sword Art Online games, I don't think have quite enough popularity left on them. Notably, though, some of these games are not discounted either, at all. And it really is just going through a list here. Mahou Arms. Open that one and look at that. Onichimbara Z2 Chaos for $9.99. It's probably going to be the best. This is probably an adult game that's mixed reviewed. Starting to see some games that definitely feel like they are more adult focused, which that is something to also figure out. Is now that I have the adult content unlocked, will I see those types of games promoted by a sales here? And I guess Hentai Demon implies that yes, I would see some adult content being promoted, not a ton of it. And I would have to just assume that a lot of this that we're being shown is just being procedurally recommended, and that there is no human hands in here telling you to check out this game. Well, I imagine what it really happens is there is a certain level of placement where the developers are paying to get the big squares. When you're on a list like this, I imagine there is no paying. You're probably paying a little less to get the medium-sized squares, and maybe some of these are just randomly being given for free. I wouldn't be surprised if even small successful games on Steam are successful because they are paying for a certain amount of advertisement each month. Let's see, mostly negative on that game. Zora the Chronicles. Some of these, though, are things I feel like I've missed. This Your Sword is So Big almost certainly is an adult game. Yeah. Yeah, there's a Ruby game here. I don't think Ruby is relevant enough. And I think at this point I have to just admit Ruby is almost certainly never going to be relevant enough to justify playing a game based on it. Like, I've talked about Ruby multiple times, and nobody has ever said anything one way or the other as far as whether they even know what it is. Which, at a certain level, that's a shame, but it is just what it is. Like, if the Western animators, if in general, had even one good series for people to point out to and say, hey, here's something that could become a video game, that'd be amazing. I guess Avatar games have managed to do some of that. Yeah, this is on the fall list from 2020, and it's still early access. Mahou Arms. Inseparable. I thought was something else, now that I look at it. Ninja Gaiden is on the wish list. This is Ninja Gaiden Master Collection of Ninja Gaiden Sigma. I think that's the Sigma sign. 3 high-speed ninja action titles are now available in one package. Yeah. Well, I think I can go ahead and put that on the wish list. It does probably make more sense to play Devil May Cry first than Ninja Gaiden second, although they might be fairly separate games. And then Bloodbath certainly catches my attention with a cast of rowdy looking characters, but it's from 2014 and it is mostly negative. Probably abandonware. Really can't even say it's an asset flip game. Let's see. Originally $14.99, $1.40, $1.49 now. Zorro is on my follow list and just doesn't have a lot of positive reviews. I might make a special exception to play a Zorro game, but it is questionable whether Zorro is even that relevant. These are games that actually came out today. Construction Simulator, I'll give a follow to because that could be something. A trash horror collection almost certainly is not anything I'm interested in. Maze of Realities is a hidden object game. Not seeing a ton of these days. We were seeing basically one every 1 or 2 weeks from Big Fish Games, and usually 1 or 2 other per week, if not one every other day from other publishers. Yep. Maybe there is a bit of a pressure from Valve and Steam to stop seeing so many hidden object games being listed also. Inherently, the Steam Direct system probably needs an improvement where it's $100 to list your first game, but then it's $1,000 to list your second game, or $200 to list your second game, and then $400 the next third game. That kind of extra pressure would let's see, is this an adult game? All Day with Quinn? I think it is. Yeah, 3D model, visual novel character. None of the screenshots are showing nudity so far, but definitely showing her in bikinis and underwear a lot. This is your typical Western type of visuals you get, where it's just a 3D model of a person, usually a tall blonde. It is adult only content. Some non-explicit but suggestive sex scenes and occasional violence is all it says the game actually has. So people probably would be fairly disappointed with Holiday with Gwen. Super Punch Patrol beat 'em up game with a blue and pink art style. I'm gonna give that a chance, but almost certainly that art style won't work. But yeah, if Valve put some pressure on your second game, your third game that you release, that wouldn't really affect anybody who's actually successful. Arguably, it's probably better to put a time limit than actual pressure of extra cost. Yeah, this Outbound Ghost might be something too. So just telling them you can only release one game per month until you establish a relationship with us, and then maybe you can release one game per week. Like, nobody really needs to be able to put more than one game out per week. Anyways, Alec here. It kind of looks somewhat visually polished here. Like somebody's actually trying. So I'm going to give this a follow. But I don't think I'll make a short around it. Survival Epoch. I think we can say no to. But right now what we have is only speculation, and the speculation is worse because it does seem weird that we haven't seen more hidden object games. I could totally believe I'm totally wrong about adult games, the amount of adult games that should be released on Steam or would be released on Steam if Steam wasn't running some kind of level of interference there, which almost certainly they are, or at least I heavily suspect they are. But I don't think I'd be wrong about hidden object games. Like, I don't have a dog in the fight around hidden object games. Here we have another adult game called Hot Mom, which, again, 3D models, this time with a male, and this time many of the screenshots showing pornographic imagery. So far today we've seen 2 3D model Western style animation games. Although, in all fairness, Hot Mom supports the language of English and Chinese, so it's a low effort Chinese game really more than anything. In general, though, we may just be seeing less games in total. The next step on this would be to start collecting tags, since there isn't inherently a category of, well, no, the games do have the genre. So if I made the macro do a lot more work, which would probably cause it to break down a lot more often, and scan for the genre and then scan for the languages, you could probably get better statistics, although arguably these are statistics you might be able to get out of an API to Steam anyways. But yeah, if I could start to have a running count for week over week as far as which genres of games are coming out, although that's not going to really help too much because almost every adult game is going to probably be under the category of visual novels. This looks like a mobile game that's been ported, but it doesn't look terrible, so I'll give it a chance. As far as like a potential kids game, I assume it's a potential kids game, I guess, if it wasn't. And remember, Steam has forced them to move all of their advertisements off of their thumbnails, so you now have cleaner thumbnails, or at least a requirement for cleaner thumbnails, whereas before people were filling up their thumbnails with all kinds of awards and sale advertisements and things like that. Potato Survival looks like garbage. I have no idea how many games are left. Shape of the Toilet Rim looks like garbage. Oh, we don't have much at all. Maybe 20 more games to look at. Yeah, I didn't think there was a lot of games that had come out since Monday. Then we have something that very possibly doesn't support English. Chinese game of some sort. Yeah, Chinese hidden object game. So we did see 2 hidden object games today. Silent House. I can't help but assume that's supposed to either be silent or siren. S-I-R-E-N, and it's just being mistranslated. This is kind of more of an adventure game from the looks of it. Chinese. and allegedly English. And then they're putting that as a casual indie as far as genres, which is going to really highlight the problem of trying to look at things based on genres. Even trying to sort the games in your library based on genres doesn't really work. Manservant gay visual novel. I better not show this one. Well, yes, there is nudity here, and it is guy on guy porn, and they are definitely showing it. Actually, it's more kind of beast on guy porn more than anything. Seems to be there's only like one human that's involved, and then a bunch of monsters. What languages does that support? English only. Yep. And in that case, it's a flat art style, but definitely still a Western animator, obviously. A Western animation style, a flat 2D. I'm surprised I don't see more of that art style, frankly. And I am always a little shocked on just how many of the gay furry games get made. It's not as big of a niche, I would suspect, as it seems. But yeah, maybe furries and the gay audience though just spends a lot more money to be advertised to. I'm gonna give this a follow, but not make a short on it, because there might be something to this game. Yeah, there might just be a gay premium on entertainment, because if you want to see gay content, there's less to pick from. Although I wouldn't expect it to be that big of a deal. If you want to see gay porn, you can go to Pornhub and see plenty of gay porn as much as you can see straight porn, guy on guy porn, girl on girl porn. Totally available online and on the internet. And maybe the furry stuff in particular, because you can't have actual animals in live action videos, is rarer. But there's plenty of fan art for furry porn out on the internet that's free too. You know, it often does just kind of feel like some of the games, I'll give this a follow, that get released on Steam are actively being made by people that are just trying to fill Steam with garbage games for one reason or another. And I guess maybe if I was running the Epic Game Store and I was spending millions of dollars to try and compete against Steam, maybe I would just pay people to make terrible garbage games and put it on Steam and muddy the water, or make an argument that the curative nature of the Epic Game Store, which it really isn't that curative, is better. Of course, that argument doesn't really work, because the only person that's really seeing all of these bad games is me, and I'm only seeing them because I've actively bent over backwards to see them. Black and white full motion video game. I don't know if actually it's all full motion video, or if it just has some full motion video. It's a side-scrolling shooter game. It's an interesting idea, so I'll give it a follow. It may be not implemented particularly well though, because the black and white may just make it very hard to visually tell what you're supposed to be doing. Unknown number, a first-person talker. Seems to be some kind of joke game or augmented reality game. Either way, I'm not interested. War of Wizards. Looks like it's a VR game that I don't think quite has enough visual polish to make me want to say yes to it. Electrician Simulator. I'll give it a chance. Although, like, if you're an electrician working on, say, fixing a controller like this, that doesn't mean that you would then also be doing like electrical work on a computer or a radio or a light bulb. Like, you might do all of those things, and the education is similar, but fairly quickly you start to specialize, and it's way easier if you're good at working with small things to specialize on small things than it is to also be working on fairly large things, such as sconces and home electrical wiring. Like, they pay fresh out of college or fresh out of high school apprentices basically minimum wage to do residential wiring, where you would get paid hopefully a lot more to fix small electronic things and trace the circuit path and figure out what the problem is. Yeah, there's a big difference between fixing like an $800 cell phone and wiring a wall sconce or a light switch or an outlet. Jam above, jam below. Looks like garbage. We have only 2 more games to look at. Not a lot of adult games though, so the numbers of adult games that you seem to get seems to go all over the place. Yeah, I think I'm gonna say no to this game too. Whereas you would think it would be more consistent. Employee of the month. I feel like I saw a game that was almost exactly like this already. I feel like Game Grumps covered this game. How can this be brand new? Well, regardless, it's not good, so. Let's go through our GameDeveloper.com articles now, and then we'll go through the fall list cleanup and see if there's any new news. We already talked about Apple increasing App Store prices across multiple regions in October. A free webinar covering handling a video game studio communication crisis, is available, although I'm not sure if you'd really want to trust a lot of these people who say they know what to do or how to do it. Although you probably should listen to them and then make your own opinions. EA Motive Studio hiring for a game based in the Marvel Comics hero Iron Man. Unity releases new game tools for matchmaking and server stability. Which, yeah, that's good for Unity, but I'm still not sure anybody should use Unity at this point. Red Storm Entertainment's co-founder Steve Reed has announced his retirement. He helped found the Tom Clancy Ghost Recon developer Red Storm Entertainment in 1996 and is retiring after 21 years as the managing director, which that's a reasonable amount of time to be at any job, certainly, and retire. The former Game Informer EIC executive-in-chief Andrew Rayner has joined Gearbox as a global executive officer, which notably I think Game Informer may have been some of the people that got laid off in the past couple days. But it is kind of interesting to see somebody go back to Gearbox when we've heard so many rumors of just Randy Pitchford mistreating people at Gearbox, and Randy Pitchford still is at Gearbox and I think basically has shares or owns the company enough that he's still entrenched in Gearbox. So either Andrew Rayner had no problems with Gearbox in any way, or Andrew Rayner was the problem at Gearbox and he's going back to be potentially a problem again. would be the only two scenarios I'd think of. We'll just have to see. Twitch will soon ban users from streaming unlicensed gambling sites, which I guess it's weird that they're going to say we're going to start doing that instead of just doing it immediately and making it the rule and saying we're going to step up enforcement of the rule. Overwatch 2's lead hero designer Jeff Goodman has departed Blizzard just weeks before the sequel was due to launch, which, you know, maybe that'll be a better thing, but I don't really have a lot of faith in Overwatch 2 being successful in any way. But the designs we've been seeing coming out of Blizzard, whether that was because of Jeff or despite of Jeff, have been pretty awful in my opinion. You have this monkey character that you're not even seeing the distinctive monkey face with his helmet, and then you've got him in this giant green armor with these armored wings. You have a character being depicted on the side here, so you really can't show anything much, but it does seem like he's just got a giant backpack, and it's not a lot of detail here. And then you have a lot of the characters just incredibly covered up. Giant boots, giant clothing in general. Like, I again suspect that they are desperate to not have another character like Tracer that caused a lot of people to draw fan art of the characters, and so they've just covered them up to a crazy limit where you're barely seeing any skin at all. But it creates bad character designs, and there's definitely ways in which you could make good character designs and still have the characters covered up somewhat. But I mean, you almost certainly for a shooter want to get rid of the gloves and show hands. You get rid of these giant boots and maybe make them just shoes that are kind of distinctive in the off color. The blue on blue is probably a bad idea here. It's too many colors and they don't really contrast each other enough. You definitely, in this case, would get rid of a lot of this green. I could see eliminating the hat first and foremost, eliminating the wings, getting rid of a lot of this armor, or reducing it, or painting it distinctively a different color, something that stood out. Being a video game, it doesn't need to be real camouflage at all. If you had like white hexagons that glistened as they moved and it looked all technological, that would look better, I think. Or if you just had more of the Overwatch logo on everything, even that would be helpful. Alright, fall list cleanup time. We have a game called Underland The Climb. Is this a platforming game, and is this a platforming game that matters? 97% positive. Yeah, it seems like you have to, almost like the Incredible Machine, manipulate the world to let the player, the lemming character, get where they're supposed to go. So it makes it slightly different than a platformer. I'll put that on the wish list. It follows the rules. It's mostly positive. Underground here needs more time, or I could just remove it from the fall list if it looks like total garbage. I'll give it more time. Undergrave. We are working our way slowly but surely towards the Z's as far as alphabetical list of games. Is this something I want to play? A roguelike turn-based tactics game. I think I can say no to this. Yeah, this gets too close to, say, something like Crypto the Necrodancer, and it definitely plays a little bit differently, but it's going to play fairly slowly, and you're just going to be on these platforms over and over again. So I'll say no to that. Under Depths of Fear is a horror game that more than likely is full of memes and jokes. So we'll get rid of that. Move that from the fall list. Under the Moon needs more time, or I get rid of it. So I'll give it more time. Undemon is from 2021, and I imagine either I'm gonna have to make an exception and say yes to put this on the wish list, or just say no. It's not relevant. Nobody's played it. So I'm gonna just say no. It doesn't stand out enough where I'd want to make an exception there. Undead Souls is mostly negative, which that makes it very easy to say no to that game. Undead and Beyond I don't think is relevant enough. And it's a little dark screenshot syndrome here, with just a little too much shadows. So I'll say no to that. 3 more games. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves is not out yet, so that's prematurely on the fall list. Unbound Worlds Apart is rated very positively. It does have single player. I need to double check to make sure things have single player, and I'm not putting something on the wish list that's an MMO or something like that. And then our final game here is Unblock Me Car, which I probably should just say yes to this and make an exception. For 99 cents, I want to do one game that does this, and this doesn't look terrible, so I'll put that on the wish list. Alright, we need to start a spectate, since we need to get that done, and then I will go through my Twitter feed and see if there's been any new news. There's been 51 new tweets, it says. Right. So I'll scroll down my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news. I could have started a little bit earlier today, and maybe there would have been even less news because of that, but I don't. Apparently Origami 2 is not leaving Game Pass. Maybe it was advertised as it was leaving soon, but they're saying no, it isn't. So okay. Yeah, I don't imagine amongst these 51 tweets though that there actually is going to be a lot of new news. It does seem like the new Monkey Island game is being fairly well received, which that's nice. Certainly they hear that it's being well received. Although I don't know if I would I don't know if I would actively try and play the new Monkey Island game very quickly when I have so many other games to play. Feels like you can take your time to get to it. Although arguably, if you do love Monkey Island, you probably should buy it in the first 6 weeks, even if you're not going to play it, to support the creation of potential future Monkey more Monkey Island content. And that's true for any game, certainly, is that you should potentially buy it in the launch window. Microsoft has this Logitech G Cloud handheld that it's showing off, which price-wise, if this allows for Xbox streaming onto a handheld that is going to be half a Steam Deck competitor and half a Nintendo Switch competitor, more closer to being a Nintendo Switch competitor in its control layout and in its lineup of games that can actually handle. There might be something to that. The question is really the price, because if this is more than, I would say, about $150, then they're screwed. And at $299, they are definitely screwed. That is way too much. There's a lot that you could have overlooked if this was more realistically priced. The fact that the Steam Deck has touchpads for mouse and keyboard input, and the fact that these controllers are vertically lined up like the Joy-Cons, so they are not going to actually play particularly well if you're trying to play an Xbox game. It's not going to feel good in adult hands. You can see even here how bent the thumb is to press that. That's way too bent to press that tiny thumbstick. The screen is pretty small here also, and it feels like there's a case around this to give more grip, but even at that, the grip doesn't seem great. But for $300, definitely buy the Steam Deck instead. You will be way better off doing that. Alright. Well, we've gone 3 hours and 30 minutes, and it's been maybe a little bit low energy, I have to admit. We have a lot of festival more to do as far as getting daily quests done. Also, I need to play more and just working towards getting rewards and getting crystals as much as possible. Ah, man, I'm running out of energy even trying to wrap up here. That's gonna be it for this stream. I need a nap apparently. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.